The power of the dark side.
Rivers bracing for the worst tonight. Good evening, I'm Jeff Herndon.
And I'm Dawn Hasbrook. Governor Rauner issues an emergency response to the communities hit hardest by the storms, but residents are not out of the woods yet.
As rivers continue to swell, residents in places near Fox Lake are bracing for the worst. Elizabeth Matthews is live with details on the flood threat tonight. Elizabeth.
Guys, we're in the middle of some historic flooding. Residents here are doing all that they can before this water continues to increase. It's estimated at least another 12 inches. If that happens, this will be the worst flood event this area has seen in a century.
I can't believe it. It just blows my mind.
John Cuneo was trying to save his property as the Fox Lake waters continue to close in on his lakefront home.
They talk about this is the worst ever in Munson, and I thought 2013 was bad.
4 years ago, Cuneo was doing the same thing, moving everything to higher ground and hoping the water doesn't creep into his basement. Also hoping for good luck, his new neighbor who's moving into the family Fox Lake home.
Cross your fingers and hope it doesn't get too much worse. I mean, I think we kind of did all our damage control that we can.
He's one of many homeowners who've decided not to sandbag, a decision made by experience.
We sandbagged 4 years ago, and it was a waste of time. I mean, it just came right over it.
Joe Keller with the Fox Waterway Agency is recommending residents move boats and belongings away from the lake's edge. Friday afternoon, his crew had to reinforce the sandbag levee that surrounds their office. He calls this flood event unprecedented.
It's very hard to predict. In fact, the reason it's hard to predict because we've never seen anything like this before as long as we've been taking records.
The rain is long gone, but the rivers continue to rise. Heavy rainfall in Wisconsin is still making its way downstream. The Fox River and Channel Lakes are expected to rise at least another foot before it crests early next week. As the water level goes up, so too do extensions to pier posts at the Channel Lakes Marina, where workers are retying the boats and watching their marina become submerged.
As you can see, the gas pumps are 2 feet underwater at this point, and the water is usually probably 2.5 feet below the bottom of where them gas pumps would be. Right over here, or as you see over there. So as previously we measured, we were probably about a little over 3.5 feet above normal water height.
Inside their shop, a water line from the 2013 flood and empty floors just in case. He says watching the water this afternoon at his marina, it was going up about 1.5 inches every hour and a half. Guys, back to you in the studio.
Elizabeth Matthews, thank you. Well, as we mentioned, Governor Rauner issued a state disaster proclamation for Lake McHenry and Kane counties. Rauner made the decision after touring some of the hardest hit areas earlier today. The emergency response is a relief for residents dealing with the floodwaters because help is now on the way. But Rauner warned that the flooding threat is not over yet.
The damage from this is not over, and let's be clear, many other communities have suffered flooding. We want to keep people safe, and we want to help them recover quickly, and the state has acted in every instance as best we can to respond, and we've done that in every community across Illinois, and we're doing that here.
Rauner said the state has coordinated the delivery of 350,000 sandbags as requested by Lake County. The state is also sending another 250,000 bags to an Illinois Department of Transportation yard in northern Illinois.
And check out this video taken by an employee at Oakland Community College in Des Plaines. It's drone video. It shows parts of the campus underwater. What used to be a parking lot looks like a pond now, and you can see the water comes right up to the steps leading into the school. Lake Forest Hospital remained closed today as crews continue to assess damage from the storm. A limited number of physicians' offices were reopened for scheduled appointments only. We want to show you part of the hospital now. If you look at this video, it looks like the floodwaters rose halfway up the loading docks. We can't see it here. Partially submerged trailers, Hospital was flooded and lost power Wednesday night. 70 patients had to be moved to other local hospitals. Officials say the hospital will remain closed throughout the weekend.
I don't know where to start because all my beds are gone, my furniture, everything. So it's just hard, especially being a single mom.
Families in Grays Lake devastated after floodwaters destroyed everything they own. The garden floor of the Brittany Square apartment building flooded Wednesday night after heavy rain caused a creek to spill over. Beds even seen floating in some of the homes. All of the residents in the building have been evacuated and utilities have been turned off. It's not known when the residents will be able to return. Well, the flooding continues to impact businesses and attractions on the North Shore. The Chicago Botanic Garden plans to reopen tomorrow for the first time since the rains hit.
And a Highland Park car dealership is being forced to trash scores of brand new cars worth millions of dollars. Fox 32's Dane Placco with the latest on the cleanup.
You've heard the sales pitch, everything must go. Well, that's the painful reality at Highland Park Ford Lincoln, where scores of brand new cars submerged by floodwaters this week will now have to be scrapped.
I think there's about 80 new cars, about 50 used cars, 20 customer cars, some lease returns. I think there were 10. One of our loaners, probably $4 or $5 million.
Water over here was about up to here.
If the water was as high as the floorboard, the dealership says it's likely it got into the engine. Today, insurance adjusters from Ford took inventory of the damage. These cars will either be cubed or given to community colleges and technical schools for training, the automotive equivalent of cadaver bodies.
It was devastating. It really was. I never saw anything like it in my life. The new cars, you know, they get scrapped. They don't. We would never even think of selling a flood car. What happens is later on, your turn signals don't work, your lights, because the looms rust where all the connectors are.
Just down the road in Highland Park, the popular Chicago Botanic Garden remains closed because of this. Here's what it looked like earlier this week as an estimated 100 million gallons of rainwater poured into the garden, raising the level of the ponds by more than 5 feet. That means many of the garden's 2.5 million plants and trees are now underwater. But you needn't worry.
The garden has a collection of 2.6 million plants. 500,000 of those are along the shorelines here that are completely underwater. And those native plants were specifically chosen to be able to withstand being underwater for about a week.
The Botanic Garden, which sees as many as 10,000 visitors a day, will reopen tomorrow, but only for limited hours between noon and 5. Engineers will be pumping about 8 inches of water per day out of the pond.
There is evacuating patients because of flooding and power outages. Fox 32's Sally Schulze is live on the scene with the latest details. Sally?
It has been a little bit chaotic outside of this Lake Forest Hospital tonight. There's just been a chain of ambulances moving behind me, working to move the patients out safely because the hospital is flooded and lost power. Ambulance after ambulance is picking up patients and taking them to nearby facilities. We're waiting to find out the exact numbers on how many patients are being moved, but we can tell you we've seen dozens of ambulances in action here tonight. It is a huge evacuation prompted by overnight flooding that left standing water inside parts of the hospital and knocked out power. The view from our chopper Air Fox helps you see what a major effort is going on here tonight. And for people who live in this area, it's a bit of a stressing situation when a main hospital has to shut its doors.
Yes, that's not sounding good either, because what happens if somebody has an emergency? Where are they going to go, and can they get to where they got to go if the roads are still closed? Because we still have these floods in place. That's going to endanger somebody's life.
The hospital has been working with the Lake Forest Fire Department and other nearby hospitals to move the patients tonight. We are waiting to get numbers from the hospital in this breaking news situation to tell us just how many patients they are moving, where they are taking them, and exactly what's going on inside the hospital. We're going to be waiting to find out the latest information here. Live for now in Lake Forest, I'm Sally Schulze, Fox 32 News.
In Gurnee, some people were rescued by boat. Emergency crews used rafts to bring residents to safety today. Our Larry Yellen is live with more on the flooding there. Larry.
Gurnee, or Dawn and Jeff, we are at the Gurnee Community Church right near Grand Avenue in Gurnee, and the residents here have been at work since about 2 this afternoon building a wall. You can see it behind me, about 3.5 feet tall of sandbags. They say that several years ago when the Des Plaines River came up over the banks, this entire parking lot around me was flooded. They're expecting that to happen again with the river reaching peak levels, record-setting levels, and they know that the worst is likely still to come. Volunteers at the Gurnee Community Church tonight, like those at the local Dairy Queen, stacking sandbags in anticipation of record-setting flood levels for the Des Plaines River. The river's up from 6 feet yesterday, past the flood level of 7 feet, to 10.5 feet tonight. The record is 11 feet 7 inches. The Weather Service predicts the river will crest at over 12 feet later this week. The village is providing sandbags, but for many those living far from the river, the damage has been done.
Well, they started this morning around 8.
The water surrounding Lino Arizmendi's tri-level home began rising this morning. Before long, Lino, his 3 children, and 2 dogs were on his top floor watching as the living room and staircase flooded.
My house is tri-level, and right now it's close to get to the second level, probably about 4 inches. So that's why we would try to get out before reach the second level.
Fortunately, Gurnee firefighters were checking his East Gurnee neighborhood, an area that even with Gurnee's history of flooding has never had major problems.
We put a couple rescuers, 3 of them in fact, to go door to door because we got a call by one resident that needed assistance, and they decided they want evacuation.
Firefighters rescued the 3 children and one of the dogs first, then returned for Dad and a second family dog. Lino's wife had headed for school before the flooding began. She was waiting when her family arrived.
It is nice to have my kids safe. That's what it matters.
The family told me they were expecting to spend tonight at a local motel that is pet-friendly or possibly with some friends. Dawn, the Des Plaines River watershed handles about 280 square acres starting way up in Kenosha, and that's why even though the rains have stopped for much of the day today, that river just keeps on rising. Live from Gurnee, Larry Ellen, Fox 32 News. Dawn?
It wasn't just the north suburbs that got hit last night and this morning. People living along the chain of lakes are coping with floodwaters as well. Residents living in Round Lake Beach woke up to find water creeping into their homes. Dane Placco has the story.
It just happened fast. This water was coming up fast, and by the time they tried to get the car out, it wouldn't start.
Michael Cordova woke up in the middle of the night to find torrential rain coming down and floodwaters coming up here in Round Lake Beach. Neighbors say they haven't seen anything like this in decades.
At 2:30, my neighbor knocked on the door, woke us up because our driveway was flooding. We had to get the cars out, and then it just kept going up from there.
And right now it's like laughing at the front door.
Yeah, all the way around. I've got my little island.
Roads closed everywhere. Getting around is a nightmare.
I left the house an hour before I was supposed to, just to prepare, and every time it was just barricaded. Cops out there telling everybody to turn around. People are trying to reverse and getting stuck in the water. So it was a complete fiasco.
At Rollins Plaza, shoppers had to risk 3 feet of water to get to the grocery store. Next door, the Hobby Lobby closed as workers squeegee out several inches of rainwater. At McMahon Auto Body, 20 cars awaiting service are now a total loss. The damage in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Your business is underwater.
Yes, it's bad, real bad.
How much loss?
Quite a bit. We lost a lot of cars back there, equipment, a lot of loss.
In Fox Lake, floodwaters caused a retaining wall to collapse, sending mud and debris onto 6 homes at Leisure Village. All have now been evacuated. While the floodwaters are slowly subsiding here in Round Lake Beach, it could still be days before residents are able to clean up, and they say they certainly don't need any more rain.
We did have to evacuate 6 homes in the area. I'm not exactly sure on the resident count, but around between 12 and 15 have been evacuated. We have had our structural engineers, the fire department structural engineers, look at it, and at this point we're not sure how long residents will need to remain evacuated.
In Round Lake Beach, Dane Placco, Fox 32 News.
The power of the dark side.